Hello! Howdy. Hi, everybody. Sam Goodman here, bringing you another episode of really fucking scary stories. Before we dive into today's macabre adventure, do me a favor, head over to www.palehorsemedia.co. You can check out this podcast. You can follow along with their other podcasts, such as The Hop Nerd and Hey Y'all with Sam. But to me, my favorite thing over at palehorsemedia.co is the merch store. We have some awesome merch from all of your shows, along with my latest book releases. So head over to www.palehorsemedia.co. If you want to get into contact with me, you can also head over to sugoodman.com. If you like the podcast, if you love the podcast, if you just got to have more of the podcast, if you just got to have more really fucking scary stories in your life, do me a favor. Go down, give us some of those stars, show us some love, give us a quick review. Make sure that you click that little subscribe button or that follow button according to where you're listening from. But make sure you show us some love, click that subscribe. I can't explain to you how much that really helps us to keep this thing going. It literally keeps the lights on here at the Pale Horse Media Co. studios here in the beautiful and the sunny downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And speaking of Phoenix, I've been on a little bit of a local kick, so we're going to keep up this really fucking scary Phoenix adventure. We're going to dive into another true crime. I know. I like it. I love it. I gotta have more of it. I've really been obsessed with true crime lately. I promise you, we're going to dive into some paranormal stuff this season as well. But I really wanted to tell you the twisted tale of Phoenix's very own drunk murderess, Winnie Ruth Judd. So let's dive right in. One of the most interesting parts of this story to me is that this is Phoenix's very own, air quote, murder house. This house still exists. This house is in downtown Phoenix. It's been restored somewhat. You can go Google this. You can go look it up. There's some great articles on it. There's a couple individuals that have dedicated themselves to preserving this house. But it's been standing for close to 100 years, and hopefully it continues to stand for that much longer. So this murder house stands, or it graces us with its presence at 2nd Street and Catalina, just north of Thomas Road in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. It stood there. It stood the test of time. It survived a couple of attempts to have it destroyed, and it's just a really interesting sight to see. The house has been restored a couple times. It sits there kind of nestled in this mixture of office buildings and just bullshit that's kind of grown up around it. It really just looks out of place. It looks like it's from another time because it completely is. It just looks like it doesn't belong. It looks like it just doesn't belong. So let's jump into the story here a little bit. Let's talk about Winnie Ruth Judd, Phoenix's very own murderess, our favorite murderess. Let's rewind all the way back to Friday, October 16th, 1931. Winnie Ruth Judd was at the Grinnell Medical Clinic. She was there, she worked as a secretary, when her friend, coworker, and former roommate, Anne, invited her over to her house for the night. Anne said that another friend was coming over, and maybe they could all play cards. Winnie declined at first, but Anne persisted. Anne Leroy lived with Hedvig Sammy Samuelson in a cottage on the corner of 2nd Street and Catalina Drive in Phoenix. Sounds familiar, huh? Winnie, Anne, and Sammy had all formerly lived together in the house. But due to differences between the three women, probably a man. That's usually how that goes, right? Let's just say there was a man. Winnie had moved out a week prior. At this point, there's a lot of tension between these three women. Winnie had been writing her husband, struggling with morphine addiction in Santa Monica, California. So he was off in like 1931 style rehab. You know, he would, so her husband, let's rewind here a little bit and say that her husband, I believe was a doctor. From everything that I've read, her husband was a doctor, and he liked to partake of his own supply. So he was using his own supply there. He was digging into the morphine. So he was away in California getting a 1931 version of rehab. I don't know if that's like electric shock tied to a bed. Who knows? I'm sure that's probably an insane story in and of itself. But so she was going through this whole stressful situation all week. You know, she's just complaining about it, right? She felt like she was going crazy. She also felt that she was complaining a lot about Anne as well, and she felt that Anne was making her crazy. So things were not warm and fuzzy between the three friends. It just not good, right? There's just a lot of bad shit happening in Winnie's life, and she's going through a lot. She feels like her friends, Anne in particular, that she is driving her towards this as well, that she's just making everything worse. So Winnie decided that she was going to see her boyfriend, Jack Halloran, that night. So let's just say husband away in California suffering from morphine addiction, and she's got a little boyfriend on the side here in Phoenix. So she might be making the situation a little bit, I don't know, more fucked up, it sounds like. But she decided that she was going to see her boyfriend, as we said, Jack Halloran, later that night. Halloran was a central figure in Winnie's case later on. Just FYI, he was a popular, wealthy business person here in Phoenix. From what I've read, it's just everyone knew Jack, and everybody liked him. And he was especially adored by the ladies. So he had a little bit of a reputation of being not only popular, wealthy, successful, and along with that came the fact that he was a ladies' man. So Jack was tangled up in the lives of the three women. The women were deeply dependent upon him. He had got himself in a position to where he was financially, they were financially dependent upon him. They were emotionally dependent upon him. From interviews, he was referred to as their meal ticket. More than that, they each felt rather possessive of Jack's attention. So it seems like they were all kind of into Jack a lot, and they got really jealous of each other, and that's never a really good recipe. So let's just recap, because I feel like we've had a lot happening so far. So we've got three women living in a house. Our main person here, Winnie, you know, her husband's away in California suffering from morphine addiction. She's going through a lot of stress with that. She's on the outs with her friends for other reasons. She had been writing her husband in California because we didn't have text messages. So OG, old school 1931 text message. She was sending her husband a letter by the post, see? And she was sending this to her husband and basically writing him those letters complaining about Anne constantly. So she was having a lot of struggles with Anne. So then you throw Jack into the mix, and then we've got like this quadruple love something going on. Plus Winnie's married, but she's into Jack, plus the other two women are into Jack, and it's just this really sticky situation that's going on here. Plus, you couple that with the fact that all of these women are extremely dependent upon Jack, both emotionally and financially. You know, see comment on meal ticket. So this is just this is a powder keg, right? Let's just say that this is a powder keg. If you want a really good recipe for murder, this is probably how you get to that point. I mean, that's just my non-expert opinion. It just seems like a really good way to get to, I don't know, murder. Winnie and Jack were particularly close. Their relationship was probably the closest out of the three, or at least as far as Winnie thought. You know, she was like, well, he might be, you know, hanging out. They might have the hots for him, but I'm like his main girl. Right, so again, recipe for murder. Winnie called Jack after work that night, and Jack confirmed with Winnie that he would be coming over later that night. So they're going to meet up this night, you know, around 8 or 9 o'clock, according to Jack on the phone. But 9 o'clock came and went, and no Jack. And guess what? Winnie was fucking pissed, right? She was stood up. She was mad. She was angry. So around 10 o'clock, she left her apartment and she went to Anne and Sammy's house. They told Winnie, why don't you stay the night with us? Winnie agreed to stay, and the gals sat around in the back bedroom gabbing over cups of rice pudding. Allegedly, who knows? I don't know if rice pudding is a great, pre-murder snack, but this is the rumor. This is kind of the lore around the story. They're hanging out, just, passing the gab around, you see. 1931, however this goes. But they're sitting around hanging out, got the radio on in the background, eating some rice pudding, talking about the boys, yeah. And so that's what's going on. So they're having their rice pudding, they're gabbing, they're gossiping. They're sharing the hot goss, they're spilling the tea. At one point in the night, Annie asked Winnie, "How did Jack start hanging out with Lucille Moore?" Wait, what? Lucille Moore? Who the fuck is Lucille Moore? So look, Jack's got a lot going on. Let's just say that. Jack is sowing his wild oats, it sounds like, all over the city of Phoenix. And who knows? Who knows where else this goes. But let's just say that they were all none too pleased to know that Jack had yet another love interest in his life. Now to make this even more complicated, this story, let's just think about this for a second. This is like next level gossip. Like, there's nothing that goes on today that is nearly as juicy as this. So let's add another layer to that. So you've got this gigantic circle of lovers with Jack, and they're all super in love with Jack, it appears, and they're all fucking angry at each other because they all want Jack to themselves. Now you throw in Lucille Moore into the mix, which another one, like WTF Jack, like slow down a little bit here. And what makes it worse? Let's add the extra sauce on top here. It was believed that Lucille was being treated for syphilis. Huge scandal. Boom, more scandal on top of it. So the women began arguing about Jack, Lucille, the syphilis. Winnie argued that professionally she couldn't divulge Lucille's medical history to Jack. And besides, Lucille and Jack were just friends. So Winnie's working at the clinic, remember? So she knows what's going on, right? And she deeply cares about Jack. And she's convinced herself that, no, it's all good. He likes me. He's not really into Lucille. They're just, they just spend a lot of time together. That's all it is. They just spend a lot of time together. So they're arguing. Anne and Sammy kind of more logically called bullshit on this. And Anne threatened to tell Jack about Lucille's syphilis. Not to be bullied, Winnie countered that if she divulged the syphilis, then she would tell everyone that the rumors of Anne and Sammy's lesbianism were true. There's more scandal in this story. So I have to keep doing this. I'm sorry. Let's add that to the list, right? Group of women that are financially dependent on one man that they're all in love with. They're all emotionally dependent on him as well. They really, really, really each are vying for his attention, and they're all super duper jealous of each other to the point to where their relationship is deteriorating. Winnie's complaining to her husband. So married and has a boyfriend. Let's throw that in there too. So one of them is married, but the one that is married and has a husband that is away in California treating his heroin addiction is the one that is the most in love with I don't know, can I say womanizer? It sounds like a womanizer who's in love with this womanizer, Jack. But now Jack has another love interest, Lucille Moore, who now allegedly has syphilis, but Winnie isn't convinced of it, even if Lucille has syphilis, because they're just spending lots of time together. They're just super good friends. But then on top of that, Anne and Sammy, and more power to them. I'm great. But they're, 1931, lesbianism might have not been a good look, right? It's something you have to be very careful with during those times. So just the amount of scandal is next level. Let's just say next level. So they're hanging out, they're munching on their rice pudding, and all of a sudden it's like, fuck you, I'm going to tell Jack that Lucille has syphilis, that she's got the clap, that she's got the old saddle rash. Fuck you, Anne and Sammy. I'm going to tell everybody about what you've been doing when I'm not here. Boom. Fight. Big fight. With those words, Winnie got up and, again, took her cup. It's allegedly full of rice pudding. Back to the kitchen, down the hallway. There was and still is in the house a breakfast room, which had a separate doorway which you could enter into. It was like a little breakfast nook room thing. So just keep this layout in mind. So you can enter into this room, and you can also go into the living room from this room. According to Winnie, Sammy came running into the breakfast room with a gun and said, "If you tell anything about Ann at the clinic, I'll shoot you sure."
I'll shoot you sure, you see.